and welcome to the Former Review. Today, we'll be talking about 3 different movies. Now sit back, relax, grab your drinks, and let's talk about these movies.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Former Review. This is Season 3, Episode 53, and I thank you all for tuning in once again. Welcome to the 5th episode in the award season series, as we are now in award season, and obviously there are a lot of movies to be seen. Now, obviously, the Golden Globes were last Sunday, but I didn't watch all the movies prior to that, so I couldn't really make any decisions on my picks and everything. But in award season, I will always make picks about the Oscar movies, because every year I watch the films that have been nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, and then all the acting categories. And then if there's time, I try to also watch the screenplay movies. Now, the films haven't been nominated yet, but that is coming out in a few weeks. But there are some good indications of which films are most likely to be nominated for these awards. And because the list is usually pretty big, I only have about a month to put out these movie reviews. So prior to them doing these nominations, I decided to increase the amount of films that I covered in each episode to 3, and I will be continuing to do this until we get to the completion of the Oscar ceremony. In prior episodes, I've already covered Mank, One Night in Miami, Promising Young Woman in the first episode, The Trial of the Chicago 7, Ammonite, Pieces of Woman in the second, Sound of Metal, News of the World, and Nomadland in the third, and then in the last one I covered Malcolm and Marie, Minari, and Judas and the Black Messiah. And in this episode, I will be covering The Little Things, On the Rocks, and The United States versus Billie Holiday. And then, of course, a small update to my collection, so stay tuned. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions, like how do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps that people like to listen on? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every single one of those questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing my podcast. And best of all, it's absolutely 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with some great sponsors. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. Again, that's anchor.fm/start. And I can't wait to hear your podcast. So the only update to my collection is that there isn't one. Now on to the movies at hand. So before I get started on, I do want to provide a slight spoiler warning, especially for The Little Things, because I will be talking about the ending on that one. I will warn you when I get to the spoiler part of The Little Things, and also with the other films, I will do my best not to completely ruin the movie for you. As always, I do suggest that you go watch the movies first before you hear what I have to say about it, if you care about that. If not, keep listening. Now, I know I say this at the end a lot of the time, but the data shows that really no one listens to that part, so I do want to reiterate the importance of leaving reviews, because it really does add to my credibility as a movie critic and also a movie analyzer. So as I continue on, I always look for feedback from my listeners, and frankly, it's because I really do this for you all, and I want this to be entertaining. So you can always go on to your favorite podcast subscription and write a review, because I do check these out, and I do want to know how you think I can improve. What do you want to hear? Do you want to hear more guests? What do you want to hear? Definitely let me know, because I want to grow and I want to get better. It's always about improving. So let me know, and you can hit me up on social media for that. Anyway, also before we hinder on, if you don't want to hear all of my thoughts on all 3 of these movies, feel free to skip ahead to about the 4.5-minute mark for The Little Things, the 14-minute mark for On the Rocks, and then finally about the 19-minute mark for The United States versus Billie Holiday. Or if you really just want to hear all 3, just keep listening. The Little Things is a neo-noir crime thriller film written and directed by John Lee Hancock, and it stars Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. It is set in 1990 with Los Angeles and follows these 2 detectives who are investigating a string of murders, which lead them to this strange loner who may be the culprit. So I'm not gonna lie, I was excited for this movie, especially after seeing the trailer, which I did record a reaction to.
You know him, didn't you? Then you had that one little feeling.
Denzel Washington is seriously one of my favorite actors, and now I'm really excited for this.
One little feeling. Just like I'm listening to you now. You can talk to me. I'm all a friend you got.
Hold up. He's talking to a dead body?
You're not exactly a department favorite. Things probably changed a lot since you left.
You still gotta catch him, right?
Yeah.
Not that much has changed then, right?
The older police officer coming back into the force and has to save everyone. This type of story.
I can assure you all, we are taking a 24/7 all hands on deck approach to these cases.
Guy's a shark. If he stops, he dies. He likes to drive. Probably has a decent car, maybe 2, high mileage.
You must really like my car.
I do. How's the trunk space?
Okay, definitely sold on this movie.
Something I gotta know. How's a guy with the best clearance rate in the department work 15 years without a promotion?
Maybe I didn't go to the right church.
When I look in your eyes, what I see, it ain't good.
Really digging the music here.
He knew all the details, but he wasn't within 10 miles of the killing.
Why is that? Why is that?
How's the trunk space?
What do you want?
I want to nail the bastard.
For who?
For all of the girls he killed.
I want to nail him too. Difference is, I'm doing it for me. It's the little things, Jimmy. It's the little things that rip you apart. It's the little things that get you caught.
Yep, definitely watching this. So after watching this, I gotta say I was a little let down, as the stars of the movie definitely demand more than this. There really has been a lack of serial killer type movies as of late, so I thought this movie would have dived more into that genre than it ended up doing. The genre mostly has moved to television shows like True Detective. Even the new Clarice is a sequel of sorts to the Silence of the Lambs movie. Why has it moved to the small screen? No idea, really. But for some reason, stories of people being haunted by the crimes they investigate is better for the small screen than it is for the big screen. Long gone is Zodiac and Seven, which this film does do its best to try to be. It feels very similar when it comes to intensity and the creepy aspects of the film, but it never really sticks to the landing. The movie does have a very good performance by Denzel Washington, but as I've said before, he can be the best part of an awful movie. Not saying that is the full case here though, because the movie does have some great cinematography of Los Angeles and a really good score by Thomas Newman, who comes from Wall-E, Skyfall, and many others. The story itself is basically the typical disgraced former cop played by Washington, who now lives alone, but is then brought back into the fray after a case that he couldn't solve is opened again. His replace on the force, Baxter, played by Malik, and him end up discovering that this loner named Albert Sparma, played by Leto, is most likely the serial killer that they have been looking for. And then the rest of the movie really ends up being this game of cat and mouse between these two men and Sparma, and things aren't all that they seem to be, and things are different along the way. The movie itself is somewhat entertaining for the entire runtime. Additionally, the internet has really hated on Leto for this movie, and frankly, I'm not in agreement there. I wouldn't say he's the greatest of all time in this role, and yes, he's done better performances, and really there's been better performances than him. However, he's still pretty good, and while he wouldn't have been my personal pick, I understand why he was nominated. Without spoiling things, the movie does have some really great performances, but the ending makes the story somewhat unfulfilling. It's not awful, it's just kind of weird. So here's your spoiler warning, because I'm going to go into that now. So in the end, Baxter ends up killing Sparma, but at the time of the murder, there's no real clear evidence that Sparma was the serial killer. There's really only as much evidence as there is that he's just simply a creep. But then Deacon, who's Washington's character, mails Baxter a red beret so that Baxter knows that he can have at least a peace of mind that he killed a killer. But did he though? We learned that the beret was not from Sparmer's home, but rather it was bought by Deacon and then mailed to Baxter. The killing of Sparmer was in fact a murder, and he wasn't a serial killer. So Deacon himself, like I said, is a former cop. So why does he do this? So earlier on in the movie, he states that while you agree to solve a murder, you essentially make this pact with the victim, that you essentially become this avenger. You are the one who's going to be carrying the burden of their murder. And as this retired cop, he has these visions of numerous victims that do visit his bedroom almost nightly, but the one that's very specific is Mary Roberts. And he is convinced that the person that killed her also killed other women like Rhonda Rathbun, who was the one who had the red beret. However, we actually then find out that Mary Roberts is not a woman who was a serial killer victim. In fact, she ends up being innocent, and Deacon accidentally shot her thinking that she was the killer as she was coming from behind a tree. Then this killing was covered up by the mortician, and the bullet hole was considered a stab wound. Sure, she may have been taken by the serial killer, but the killer didn't murder her. This consumes Deacon as he essentially then becomes her murderer and her savior in a way. He believes that he can atone for the former of that by finding the man who kidnapped and tortured her before he accidentally shot her. So at the end of the movie, Deacon covers up another murder of a definitely creepy person, but an innocent one. I mean, all the evidence in the movie does indicate that he is the killer. He even states that he gets aroused when he imagines the women being murdered by a monster in the dark. Outside of that, the only psychotic aspect of him is that he knows it's creepy, and then he messes with Baxter about it. So it seems that Baxter did the world a favor when he kills him with the shovel. However, Baxter questions this because all the evidence isn't conclusive. But when he gets Deacon's package, he puts his conscience at ease. But the audience knows that Sparmer wasn't the killer. So who was? Well, the film doesn't really give a clear answer, and it's possible that Stan Peters, who was a criminal that Baxter and Deacon interrogated early on in the movie, could have been the actual killer, because he has this odd reaction when they mention Mary Roberts to him, and he eventually does put a shotgun in his mouth. Though this isn't concretely said in the film that he was the actual killer, and the film attempts to make the ambiguity of the murders the thrilling aspect of the film, which is the part that's a little weird. The FBI comes in and sees that Sparmer's admission do not match up with the many killings, but then the killings stop. To them, it could have been Sparmer, but then the audience knows it could have also been Peters. But it also could have been somebody completely different, and that person has simply just gone into hiding. The film doesn't really tell which one of those it is precisely. We just know it's not Sparmer. So the film doesn't really end conclusively, and the ambiguity of it tries to make it thrilling and then isn't thrilling at the same time. Because if you think about it, if the deaths start up again, then Baxter is in a huge amount of trouble. And maybe Deacon's atonement is now pushed back further because he knows that he still has to find the man who captured Mary Roberts, who would possibly be the same person who killed the woman Baxter was hunting, but then Baxter would be shown as a murderer. It ends up being this kind of weird cycle that doesn't really make sense. So this film does succeed with its acting and some of its details, but it really struggles with its story and its message, and definitely its ending. While not a horrific movie, it's not one that I personally would revisit for any reason. It's simply average that does not do anything more than show a good acting by the stars in the movie. It can be a little rough to want to be able to turn back on. Now, speaking of rough, let's go on to the next movie, On the Rocks. On the Rocks is a comedy-drama film written and directed by Sofia Coppola. It stars Rashida Jones and Bill Murray along with Marlon Wayans. Similar to The Little Things, I did do a trailer reaction to this.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, kiddo.
Means I probably won't watch it. Oh, A24.
You look beautiful. Cliff, how's your mom's hip?
Good, thanks.
Good. He thinks you're my girlfriend.
Bryce.
Been busy?
Yeah. Dean's traveling with clients all the time, and I'm just the buzzkill waiting to schedule things. I'm so stuck.
So Dean's going away a lot, huh? On business trips?
Dad.
Raise your hand if that sounds fishy.
He's not like you. He's a good guy, a great dad.
Sure, it's nature. Males are forced to fight, to dominate, and to impregnate all females.
Dang, way to make Bill Murray sound awful. Her direction hasn't been
Not
the
interested.
greatest. It's not bad, though.
A woman is at her most beautiful between the ages of 35 and 39.
The more he talks, the more stupid he
I
sounds.
have many months left.
Felix, you're back in town. Been busy?
Yeah, got a lot going on.
Do you? He should be worshiping the ground you walk on.
And if he's doing something dishonorable, you need to know.
What if Dean's just busy? I'm in a rut. That's it.
I think we should follow him.
What?
I think you better see him in action.
This is your idea of incognito?
Here's the plaza. This is the place to have an affair. It has the most exits.
Exits on 3 streets.
This is a weird premise for a father-daughter film. Though it does look kind of quirky and kind of funny.
I don't know why women get plastic surgery.
Because of men like you.
I prefer
This honestly seems really funny, and I think
Yeah,
the delivery is
and every
perfect by
other
both of them
makeup.
so far, just in this trailer.
Thank you. I'm going to take that as a compliment. Are there two? Ooh.
So, Laura, who's played by Jones, lives in Soho in New York City with 2 daughters and a husband, Dean, who's played by Wayans. Now, Dean is starting to travel a lot because of his work, and Laura starts suspecting that he is cheating on her. So, he calls on her father, Felix, who's played by Murray, for some advice. And this is mainly because she knows that he cheated on her mother, and as such, perhaps may be able to give her some insight into if Dean is actually doing the same thing. Felix obviously agrees, and then the film shows Dean doing things very similar to what Felix says he would do. Now, this movie is not a complicated story by any means, but it is entertaining for the good amount of time because from a filmmaking aspect, there's just really a lot to love about this movie. New York City really feels almost foreign, and I live pretty much an hour and a half to 2 hours away from this place, and watching this movie really shows how slowed down it can be at times, especially during the pandemic, and it's not as fast-paced as it's usually shown as. The city feels simple and almost similar to a small town in Italy. Coppola doesn't use the typical city nature as a character, and because of the simple story, that works wonders for it. The movie ends up being very similar to a small romantic comedy that also dips its toe into a marriage study and a family study. It doesn't dive all the way into this, but one can easily see how Laura, who's middle-aged and mostly taking care of the children, gets to the conclusion that Dean is cheating on her with a younger woman who has no kids. I mean, that's what her father did, right? So, similar to his role in Lost in Translation, Murray here plays a father figure quite well. Though, interestingly, in this film, he actually is the father, but he's not really a good one. In contrast to in Lost in Translation, he isn't a real father, but he acts as a good one. Overall, this movie is really a demonstration of what it means to be middle class, well, at least in the film world. While the ending isn't that predictable, it's not really complex either, so I'm not going to dive too much into it. In the end, though, On the Rocks isn't a great movie, but it's one that has a lot of good things that honestly will spark some enjoyment. The movie succeeds with its direction and its ending, its details, its characters, but it does struggle with its story and really its message. Some of the narrative choices, like the length, can have audiences finishing the film and feeling a little, honestly, underwhelmed. It perhaps could have used maybe another 30 minutes or so to delve more into the ending and then the message of the movie. Now, while personally I would not revisit this movie, it's not one that I would say is a horrible movie in any way. In fact, it's a very well-made movie, but only feels fine in comparison to really good. So speaking of really good, let's now move on to a now Golden Globe winning film, The United States versus Billie Holiday. United States vs. Billie Holiday is a biographical drama film about singer Billie Holiday and is based on the book Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs by Johann Hari. The film was directed by Lee Daniels and stars Andrew Day in the titular role, along with Trevante Woods, Natasha Lyonne, and Garrett Hedlund. So the source is really interesting for this movie because Hari's novel is not really about Holiday. It's actually examining the history and impact of the drug criminalization, also known as the War on Drugs. He does profile Billie Holiday in one chapter as she was a heroin addict, but it's not a biography biography or an autobiography of her. So who was she then? For those who don't know, let me give you a quick history lesson. So Holiday was born Eleanor Fagan on April 7th, 1915, and she became an American jazz and swing music singer for 26 years. Her vocals were inspired by many jazz musicians and essentially pioneered a new way of manipulating phrasing and tempo. She's well known for her vocal delivery and improvisational skills, and over the course of her career, said many memorable songs such as All of Me, The Very Thought of You, and Lady Sing the Blues, though her perhaps most famous song is Strange Fruit. So the lyrics of this song are drawn from a poem by a Jewish American named Abel Meropol. Her singing of them, though, is one of the most impactful songs in history, if not simply in her career. The words are a protest to the lynching of black Americans, with the lyrics comparing the lynching to the fruit of trees. As such, this song essentially marked the beginning of the civil rights movement in the United States. Now, it has been covered many times, but Holiday's version was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1978 and also was included in the Songs of the Century list of the Recording Industry of America and National Endowment for the Arts. She ended up saying that she had a very personal attachment to the song as it reminded her of her father. In her autobiography, she said that, quote, "It reminds me of how Pop died, but I have to keep singing it, not only because people asked for it, but because 20 years after Pop died, the things that killed him are still happening in the South," end quote. So I found this out about her performances of the song. She had the waiters in the restaurants silence the crowd right before this song began, and then in the long introduction, the lights would dim and all movement would cease. And as she began singing, only one small spotlight would be illuminating her face. And then on the final note, the lights would go out, and when they came back on, Holiday was gone. So her recording of this was a hit, and really this is no small feat because this was during the same years that the three biggest songs were Judy Garland's Over the Rainbow, Kate Smith's God Bless America, and Glenn Miller's Moonlight Serenade. Now this song not only gained her more fandom, but also the attention of the United States government, more specifically the FBI. And this is what the film focuses on. So many white men in power wanted her to stop singing it, but she refused to move it from her set. This then pushes Harry J. Anslinger, played by Headland, who was the commissioner for the FBI Division of Narcotics, to set the singer up because of her well-known heroin problem. He then used a black FBI agent named Jimmy Fletcher, played by Rhodes, to bring her down, to give himself more power and then prestige in the department. Though eventually Fletcher does end up becoming part of her inner circle and then even her lover. So this film shows that the FBI's actions, indictments, and convictions of Holiday are fairly racially based. Anslinger did essentially hate the song, and he used the power of the government to attempt to cut her off. And as reported in the newspapers at the time, her arrest, trial, and imprisonment occurred across less than 2 weeks in May of 1947. And a newspaper at the time called it, quote, "a sordid tale of narcotics addiction that unfolded in the U.S. District Court," end quote. And at the trial, she was told that she wasn't a danger to society. Rather, she was a victim of, quote, "the worst type of parasite you can imagine," end quote. And accused the heroin dealers of following her around and overcharging her for the drugs. And then her lawyer, instead of defending her, told her to plead guilty because she'd likely get probation and then just sent to a hospital to treat her addiction. Then the judge sentenced her to a year in prison that, quote, "the government was going to give her benevolent treatment at the reformatory," end quote. So though she obviously became a very powerhouse singer, she tragically then met her end when she was hospitalized later on for liver cirrhosis. So while she was hospitalized, the feds did plant drugs on her again in an attempt to get her to name her dealers. At the time, she was handcuffed to her bed and law enforcement kept a tight watch over her. She ended up passing on July 17th, 1959, while still under the watch of the FBI. Though this film does have some real-life truths, it does play with history a lot. At the beginning of the movie, Holiday sits down for an interview with radio journalist Reginald Lord Devine, who's played by Leslie Jordan, with their stylist. Though neither of these two characters are real, though Daniels has said that the radio host was based on a few people. This then sets up her performance at New York City's Cafe Society, which was the first racially integrated nightclub in the US, and also the venue where she had debuted Strange Fruit 8 years prior. However, in real life at this time, Holiday was actually working for New York City's Downbeat Jazz Club, and Cafe Society had started experimenting financial troubles by then. And this scene scene has a lot of important people who are integral to Holiday's story, but it's really completely invented that all of them were in the same location at the same time. Though one thing about the scene that is true is the fact that Orson Welles was waiting for her, as the two had a very well-documented affair in the 1940s. So one of the people in the scene has legendary saxophonist Lester Young, who's played by Tyler James Williams. In real life, he did play with Holiday for a good amount of years and did give her nickname Lady Day. The problem here is that a lot of jazz writers have stated that his playing style and personality are fairly inaccurate. So another character in the scene is Jimmy Fletcher. So while it's true that he was assigned by Anslinger to tail Holiday undercover, and also that he took it because of his hatred of drugs and their effect on Black Americans, outside of this, very little is known about his life. So any interaction that doesn't include Holiday is possibly true, but also possibly not. Though the scene where he arrests her, where she strips naked and berates him, is factual, outside of the location that they're in, and also they got rid of the fact that she also urinated on the floor. So as the film progresses, Fletcher is shown to take a more liking to Holiday's music, and while that's up for debate, the fact that he did end up regretting his role in investigating Holiday is true. The other parts of this film that are true was that Holiday was raped when she was 10, and that FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover thought that Strange Fruit was, quote, un-American, end quote. After the sentence to 1 year in prison and being released for good behavior, she does headline Carnegie Hall. The venue sells out, and then someone yells in the crowd to sing Strange Fruit, which she says she can't do. Now, the problem here, because this is such a big moment in the movie, because she feels the pressure of people telling her not to sing the song. In real life, Carnegie Hall has Strange Fruit on the set list for this March 27, 1948 concert. Additionally, when she's arrested a second time, there's no record of Fletcher purposely throwing the case on the witness stand to help her to be acquitted, as shown in the movie. The movie then shows him joining her crew, quote, under assignment, though he then tells her and ends up falling in love with her. Now, it is known that they had a very long affair. It's not really verifiable that he loved her, but it's possible. However, the scene where he shoots up with Holiday and the band is most likely true, as is how the film shows Holiday's background with her mother. So undercover agents would often shoot up with their targets to demonstrate that they weren't narcs, and Holiday's mother was often absent and then later became a prostitute who forced Holiday to engage in it as well. So not only does this film struggle with some of its details, it also struggles with its direction and its tone. Lee Daniels here jumps all over the place when it's telling the story that unfortunately has little to no explanation that can be somewhat hard to follow along. He also barely dives into Fletcher's story and his conflict of being a black man, arresting one of the most famous black women at the time, and we're told that he regrets this, but that's really it. It's not really developed very much, and this may be due that there's not much documentation of the man. Daniels here was trying to choosing to focus more on Holiday, and this part of the movie is done fairly well. It is solemn, and at the end he even shows her in a Jesus-like fashion. However, in a few other scenes, he cuts between Holiday singing on stage and then also having sex with someone backstage. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it doesn't seem to have a point aside from showing more evidence of who Holiday was. And if this was the point of that, that's fine. But it only seemed pointless because there was already plenty of evidence of this prior to this scene. Though this film has a lot of problems, what will keep anyone watching this movie is Andra Day as Holiday. She is absolutely mesmerizing as the singer. And Day ended up getting the Golden Globe for Best Woman Actor in a drama. And frankly, she's absolutely deserving of that. She embodies the singer in every single way, including the singing. Day did all of the singing for this role, and it even feels that she was born to play this one based on her singing alone. And then she absolutely nails the dramatic non-singing scenes as well. Daniels here shows Holiday as a person who's gone through a lot of trauma, and she continued going through trauma up until her passing, and he does this pretty much by mixing sex, violent ambition, which is similar to his other films, but it doesn't always work in this movie. He plays with facts as much as really the Diana Ross version of the singer in Lady Sings the Blues. Both of these movies create a scene where Holiday sees a lynching in the South. Though it is a fictional scene, it is immensely powerful because of Day's performance, and I personally found myself in tears while watching this scene. In all honesty though, biopics are meant to be entertainment before anything else, not history lessons. It's not the first to invent things even when the real story is dramatic enough, and surely it won't be the last. While this story does play with the facts, it does succeed with its message, its acting, and the musical details. Day's performance is perhaps the most mesmerizing one of this year so far that I've seen, and frankly, I hope she gets the Academy Award for this, if not only the nomination. Having said that, the movie itself could have been a lot better, but I would rewatch this movie simply for Day's performance and singing voice alone. Now, what did you think of the movies? Let me know. Hit me up on social media. The Former Review is on Facebook, Twitter, the Gram, and now YouTube, where I will be posting many things, including trailer reaction. Handle is all the same. It's at The Former Review. Feel free to also check out backseatdirectors.com, where I work with a big team to put out movie reviews and also editorials. Again, that's backseatdirectors.com. Please also subscribe to The Former Review. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're now on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. Honestly, pretty much anywhere you can find a podcast, we have our content there. Also, I'm always wanting to grow and improve, so please leave a review and what you want to hear, because I really do this for you all. I see the numbers, and I really appreciate everyone supporting me and talking to me about movies, because frankly, that's what it's all about. And for anyone who has supported me on a financial basis, thank you again. And if you want to help support on a financial basis, please go to anchor.fm/the-formal-review and click support this podcast. And honestly, any donation is appreciated. Thank you all again for tuning in. And until next time, wear your mask, wash your hands, stay safe, and take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Former Review. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.